Welcome back. Simply Trade Tips. We're on episode 3 of Technology and Trade. This episode is importing and exporting. I'm Renee Chiuchiarelli. I'm here with Julie Parks, Hammer and Heels. We're going to let you know, we're going to give you a short information about technology and figure it out, FIO. So Julie, what should we cover today?
Hey, so Renee, in tech, we did cover a little bit about mitigators and kind of set up the topic. Now I think we should have a little fun with this. So I think we should talk about importing and exporting and kind of what automation is happening in the space, and really kind of do this with the thought that automation isn't about replacing people. It's definitely about replacing the rework and the work, right? So we still
That's
want
right.
thoughtful people, but that's my thought.
Awesome. So our
Sound good?
core focus, yes, our core focus areas are going to be import, export, declaration filings, data validation before submission, and system to system integration with customs authorities.
Mhm.
And then, like you said, automation supports compliance decisions and it doesn't replace people. So, and we're not talking about supply chain visibility, just for verification for our audience, for our listeners, and we're not talking about ERP finance automation. This is just specific to trade.
Right.
So,
So maybe we just tune our brain to a few things like document management, um, and kind of like the filing itself.
yes.
I
Okay,
like it.
so all right, awesome. So now we're going to get into accuracy filing management. So where does automation show up in a declaration filing? Most errors don't come from bad intent. We know that. They come from disconnected systems or disconnected documentation.
Mhm.
So let's share a few automation supports. I'll start. So number one, data ingestion. So this is like pulling SKUs, your data, product entry SKUs, your value from your finance
Mhm.
system, your origin, maybe from your, sourcing. Maybe you have a separate sourcing system or it's in your ERP, your party data. So your vendors, your suppliers,
Mhm.
maybe your transportation management system. So you're getting your logistics data. And then, of course, some of us have product databases, whether they're in our ERP or our Excel files. So those are some of the data
Right.
ingestion points.
Yeah, and then I think Renee, maybe another category could be that rules-based validation. So when you use something or before you use it, maybe you're bouncing it against some rules that say like, did I get the HS right? Did I add all the extra HS numbers that need to be added? There might be some country of origin logic that you want to put in there that says that if the shipping country is different from the origin, maybe you're doing a check there. There's also value examples that we've seen where you can say if something from a certain supplier is valued under a certain amount, let's just check that out. So those are kind of some examples of rule-based validation. Renee, maybe there's another category you can think of.
Yeah. So documenting automation related to documents. So how can we automate
Mhm.
commercial invoice, packing list, certificate of origins, and like in today's environment, mill certs. You know, there's so many additional documents related to these executive orders. So we can
Mhm.
AI can check these documents for inconsistencies. You can do EDI. So anyway, there's a lot of automation that can happen with documentation to validate the information.
And just a plug on that, Renee, like I've had experience kind of taking paper, right? All trade works on paper. So artificial intelligence is being used to take the paper and turn it into data so that you can then add on all of your customs attributes. So perhaps gone are the days of paying for costly integrations, what field mapping to what field. AI can do a lot of these things, and customs brokers are doing it. There's software packages that'll do that and cover it. But I'll also add there's perhaps another category of actually being able to direct file. So there's custom systems that allow you to direct file. Again, some governments are more friendly than others if you're talking about global. There's also the ability to ingest government single window data. I know we're working on UK data, EU, eventually we'll get there, but definitely the US is pretty advanced in that, and Canada with CARM. So you can actually see and ingest the data that the government is filing.
Yeah.
Renee, maybe there's one more category. Yeah.
Yes, but I wanna go back to your middleware and all I
Mm.
remember the days of you and I doing that and how horrific it was. That was literally the worst part of our automation project. So thank God we can just use documents and AI. I am so excited. Okay, so the last area is exception handling. So we can flag
Mm.
anomalies, for human review, like Julie just mentioned. Maybe our AI will catch something and we
Mhm.
want human review. Reduce post entry corrections and penalties by doing that, right? So if we're catching things prior to it ingesting in custom system, we're going to reduce the post review.
Yeah.
So anything
Just amazing stuff in this space, really. I mean,
amazing,
so
amazing.
so
It's
maybe we shift, Renee, and we can talk about the types of automation providers. So like maybe I'll start with one being kind of like just customs filing platforms, and they do all these the things that we mentioned above. But essentially it's purpose built software for declaration submission. It's certified and approved by customs authorities, and we think that this is a great way to start. There's definitely speed in implementing one of these systems. There's also direct connectivity to custom systems in a lot of cases, or directly to your broker. But there's also limitations. So, like if the system comes as a can, right? You have to still rely on the data going into it to be correct, right? So if you don't set up the rules the right way, it might not completely work. So with all these kind of types of automation providers, there's definitely strengths and weaknesses. Renee, can you think of another type of automation provider?
yeah, like a complete system, a global trade management platform where, it's just a broader
Mhm.
compliance suite, combining classification, origin, screening, export screening, filing of entries, both
Mhm.
import and export. Maybe, like we said, just a complete, data a portal where you're storing your
Mhm.
data, right? It's
Mhm.
centralized, it's enterprise scaled. So these large, like we said, a
Mhm.
global trade management system. It's a massive implementation, but maybe not with our AI, and
Mhm.
requires a strong internal data discipline. You have to have multiple cross-functional teams involved in this implementation. It takes a lot of time, probably more
Mhm.
expensive as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, just to kind of summarize, right? Customs filing platforms are generally employed by brokers. We have global trade management platforms that are generally deployed by importers and exporters. And then also like kind of this third category could be something that you're actually getting from the broker as a, software as a service. So in this area, it's interesting to me because if you are not a cash rich company, you might want to leverage what the broker has and pay them in your entry fee. When you pay something in your entry fee, it's actually, depending on how your entry fees get allocated, it generally gets allocated to, I'll call it not your department, right? So if you want particular elements of GTM software, but you can't afford it, you can leverage your broker's technology. They have a lot of it. And I think that's a really good way because they're filing everything and they know what goes wrong. The gap there might be that their software might not be completely conditioned to look at exactly what you want as an exporter importer, but still that cost variation. Because remember, if you deploy these things yourself, you're generally talking about a direct cost from a cash perspective in your department, or you're talking about some type of a capital expenditure to kind of buy these systems and amortize them. But again, it's to your department's budget.
Yeah.
Renee, maybe there's a combo of these. Like, what's your
Yeah,
thought
the
on
hybrid
that?
where you have trade and
Mhm.
advisory. So we're talking about, like Julie said, broker systems, your importer exporter systems, but maybe there's a hybrid model where you have combining automation with trade professionals. The strength of that
Mhm.
is technologies handling the volume. Experts are handling the judgment calls. So you have intervention with humans. And it's since the environment we're in is becoming increasingly complex, as we know, this might be a great uh, option, this hybrid option.
And I love this model too. predominantly for the fact of, if you think about this as perhaps an outsource option. So when you outsource, you're not just getting the tech, you're as so like for example, if you still have to have internal people to manage the operations and the oversight. Um, but the idea is if you use some of these hybrid models, you're getting the best of having the experts out externally kind of work on your piece on your accuracy, right? You're overseeing it, and the generally some of these hybrid models, the capabilities that are in the tech are very much slanted toward an exporter or importer. But then you get the benefit of not having the carrying costs of headcount internally, which you may love or not love. Again, every model is different depending on the company that you're in, and we'll talk about org structures in a future piece. But I think all of these models are really viable, and I think need to be analyzed through the lens of what your cost structure is, how much money can you spend. Maybe you can't spend and you only have shreds of money to spend. And then the second is, should you be even analyzing heads to do some of this analysis work in the outside as well, or in the broker's office?
Okay, so let's talk about technologies behind import and export automation. Can you tell us, Julie, some of the common tech components?
Yeah, so APIs and EDI are kind of like APIs is kind of like the new aspect of like that verified credential. Like I know Renee is giving me information and she knows me, right? Or EDI is like there's an old-fashioned kind of handshake that happens there. Those kind of capabilities exist. There's rules engines that kind of give you classification logic, origin rules, value thresholds. There's a data normalization model that kind of talks about harmonizing the ERP supplier and logistics data kind of in a similar platform, right? Because a lot of our data ends up being in the silo of the transportation management system, the silo of your ERP system for buying and selling, and then the silo of your broker maybe for global trade. There's data normalization models that kind of pull all that information together. There's also kind of the aspect of audit trails, right? So in a lot of this technology, there's time-stamped decisions, there's version control that we want to take a look at in the tech. And then kind of last but not least is, well, actually second to the last is workflow automation. I think that when we talk about workflow, there's a way to route exceptions, there's a way to gain approvals. So there's capabilities in the software that allow you to do that, escalating for decision making or when things don't seem quite right. You can pull those out and get them. But the really, and I think most important piece is the artificial intelligence, machine learning piece. I think that this is a huge win for trade. And it shouldn't be something that we stray away from. It's something we should really embrace and think of it as another tool that we can be deploying. But I think that this is AI and ML is so incredible for pattern recognition, right? So, like you as a trade professional might go, that tariff is completely wrong, but you know it because of your brain. AI will pick it up because it knows this one doesn't quite look like all the others, and isn't it worth a try in that space? So maybe Renee, let's pivot to thinking about. We talk about all. It's not all about us, right? It's kind of about how the government is leveraging. So how is the government leveraging these tools to validate an import or export or transmission? Like, what have you found the governments are doing here?
Yeah, I recently saw a post on LinkedIn that said, "Hey, I hope you're not working in like 2000 because it's 2026 and the governments now have increased their technology significantly. They're ahead of
Right.
us. They're using phenomenal AI and machine learning, like Julie said. So they're using import and export automation to receive the data faster. They're screening transactions in real time, enforcing compliance more consistently at a much
Mhm.
larger scale. So by automating the declaration intake, our intake, risk targeting, and audit selection, customs authorities shift reactive enforcement to proactive. I mean, when we started, they were using
Mhm.
red pens. I've said this
I
in
think
our before. They were checking manually and giving me a document back that had a red pen mark on it. So it's data driven oversight
right.
while still relying on human judgment for high risk decisions. But I mean, let's just face it, customs is using the tools we have and
Mhm.
more to, like we said, be proactive instead of reactive. So let's sum it up.
Oh, I don't want to gloss over this, Renee, but one thing that we could probably think about is the benefit here is that we would holler when we would get treated differently at a port, in a different port, or the
Yeah.
customs inspector would do something different. A lot of these capabilities that the government has makes them be a little bit more authentic and standard. Again, inspectors on boots on the ground will do what they will, but it's very much minimized. But I also say too, it's also scary, and that they're kind of making these decisions, the tool is, and giving them to a officer for review and get prompting them, hey, look at this. And that's something that we really hadn't seen before in these broad scales. So again, it's more the case that we need to get there first as exporters importers, so that we can at least match what the government is
What's he
doing.
doing?
So sorry, Renee, I
Yeah.
interrupted you.
No, no, no. That's awesome. Thanks for the ad. Yeah. I mean, the real
Yeah.
takeaway is we have to be proactive because customs is being proactive.
Mhm.
So what are some
Mhm.
realistic expectations? And we can sum this episode up a little bit, Julie.
Yeah, I think that you need to think about automation in a space as kind of reducing those manual errors. We want consistency, and finally, so we want to increase that consistency. I think that we're going to speed that throughput, but it does not eliminate regulatory judgment. It does not fix bad master data. And you guys know every project that you've ever worked on in tech always has a component of, is the master data accurate? And boy, I need to go back to my supply chain and get that gussied up a bit. So I think that really, to sum this up, I think automation accelerates the good decisions, but it really exposes those bad data elements kind of in a faster way. So, Renee, maybe we should pivot to kind of listing some of the providers in the space. Like maybe something that's interesting is, like, I just a highlight from before, leveraging your service providers is always an option. They have to have the capability to have it working for multiple people in this space. I know some brokers are more advanced than others in kind of adopting that technology. So I do want to shout out to the brokers. But Renee, I think you did some research on some core service providers, and we'll talk about a lot of those in a future episode and more specifically, but generally, can you give folks an idea, the flavor of the players that might be in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. A few that I'm familiar with are obviously Descartes customs compliance software. That again, we talked about the different types. This is enterprise
Mhm.
wide grade customs compliance software.
Mm,
I'm familiar with Align,
no.
which is a company that's using AI for auditing product database. They're a self filer, really inexpensive, great tool. There is Thompson One Source Global Trade, which is by Thomson Reuters. This is customs duty management and trade compliance automation as well. And like Julie said, we're going to mention in a further a next episode, we're going to get into a lot more details about the options. So stay tuned for that. So
Right. And of
I
course, your
think,
standard like SAP and whatnot. And I'll also say too, some of the providers we just focused in on here are really import and export specific, like CargoWise, et cetera. But the idea is what you got to understand is that if someone at like a company like KYG might be kind of launching more in the classification space, there's generally a appetite to expand beyond just doing classification, or like Renee mentioned, a company like Align might be doing more on the auditing end. There's going to be an appetite for them to expand, and there's never been a more crowded space, I think, in trade. And also, kind of give a shout out to Customs and Border Protection, because they did engage, Altana, Byte. There's many different companies that they've engaged in their own government contracting to get those software packages up to speed for customs, and now they're pivoting to kind of sell us similar software. So I think shout out to customs. There's definitely more. We'll give more credit and more time on the service providers, but just wanted to mention a few that were in the importer and exporting space.
thank you, Julie. And like we said, we'll get into a lot more and more about the ones we've mentioned. But for a reminder, in physical trade, automation isn't about removing people. It's about letting experts focus on what experts can do. So what do you think, Julie, our FIO should be?
Ooh, so what I like in this space is, so we might have prompted some ideas, like, global trade runs off of paper. Think about that. Like, we used to hate it, but guess what? Artificial intelligence can use it. I think what I'd like to see y'all do is just kick the tires, pick a company, kick the tires, see what they can do in the AI space. I don't care if it's something that's, I went a previous episode, a mitigator, a free trade agreement or whatever software, but do yourself a favor, take a pause, reach out to some of these companies and just hang out, get a demo, see what the capability is of how it might align with what you have internally.
Awesome. All right, you guys, see you next time. Thanks. And visit our community, Trade Geeks, and we look forward to seeing you.